when it comes to recovering from addictions, compulsions, and bad habits, there's something very important that you need to know about. It's called post-acute withdrawal symptoms. Sometimes people refer to it in the clinical world as PAWS. PAWS is something that can threaten your abstinence. It can throw you back into the cycle of relapse. Again, that's a cycle that's very predictable. And basically, post-acute withdrawal symptoms threatens your abstinence because it's a point where you start to become very distressed. So for example, what I've seen in my clients is they start to have mood swings. They start to feel a sense of anxiety, fear, irritability. There's a variable energy in their whole body-mind system. They go up, they go down, they feel exhausted, they feel excited and energized, and their concentration starts to get very bouncy. It starts to get all over the place. Sometimes there's low enthusiasm. They just feel flat. They tell me they're just anhedonic. They're just not enjoying things. And a key sign is they start reporting sleep problems. They start oversleeping or undersleeping, or their sleep is all over the place. Here are some rules that are key when it comes to managing post-acute withdrawal symptoms. Let's cut through all the details here and look at the big picture. The important message is that it's time for you to change your life. You don't want to just be rearranging the decks on the Titanic, to use an expression. You want to be just changing, putting everything on the table, doing what you need to do to beat your addiction, your compulsion, and your bad habit. Next, you have to make a commitment to be completely honest with yourself and with other people. This is particularly true of people that you're turning to for accountability: therapists, counselors, accountability buddies. Addiction is fueled by lying. And I do not mean that in a judgmental way. I mean lying in the sense of just covering up, avoiding, obscuring, leaving things out, being dishonest with yourself. When it comes to anything that's on autopilot, like an addiction or a compulsion, we're prone towards distorting things. We're prone to, here's an example for you. Someone that I work with that's dealing with a food and an alcohol addiction just started telling me that instead of counting calories, they just were going to be a little bit looser with their plan because they didn't want to be a rigid person. Now, here's where this gets slippery. This person has quite a dangerous history of bulimia and anorexia. And so they, in their past, have spent years in a cycle of binging and purging, which has caused them, quite frankly, it's put them in a lot of medical danger. So it's no small thing when they start telling me that they're just no longer counting calories. They're just kind of winging it, right? And that's because over the time that I've known this person, they've been very prone to misperceive what's going on with their food consumption. That brings us to the next important rule. You want to be asking for help. You can't do this in isolation. Occasionally, I meet a person who tells me that they had an addiction or compulsion. They read a book, they read an article, they made a decision, and they were able to stop the behavior. And it was relatively easy for them to do that. Again, that is something that some people can do, but if you're really dealing with an addiction or compulsion, then you can't. You actually need help to do this. So ask for help. The next important rule or guideline, again, I want to just cut through all the details here. It's vital that you emphasize and you practice self-care. When I'm talking about practicing self-care, here's an important guideline for you. You want to take as much self-care as you need, but not more. Why do I say that? It's because sometimes I've worked with men and women who have addictions, and their addiction or their compulsion can actually make them kind of self-centered and selfish. And so they do some damage to their relationships. They damage their marriages, their friendships, their relationships with their family of origin, because they just get very focused on themselves. So again, the guideline here is take as much self-care as you need. Definitely do that, but not more, right? You don't want to be just using self-care as a way to flee from your life and your responsibilities. You don't want to be just trying to make the world go away so that you don't have to deal with it. Over the long haul, that's not something that's going to work. It can be a short-term solution, right? Sometimes we actually have to step back from our lives and prioritize taking on an addiction. But over the long haul, it's not going to serve you. Now, here's the next guideline or the next rule for you. You want to follow the established wisdom. You want to be wary of doing it your own special way. And I want to say a word about that. We are unique. We are all individuals. That's true. And what's also true, right? So you want to make some wise decisions. You want to be discerning here because you might need to adapt your recovery plan to your specific situations. That's wise. I can't tell you the number of people that I have worked with over the years that think that they are the exception, that that the guidelines, especially when it comes to the stages of relapse, that the guidelines don't apply to them, that they're different. And again, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes that's where the harm reduction ideology can really backfire and keep people stuck in this endless cycle of relapse.